We'll provide a brief overview of IACET, and then we'll go to the history of IACET, the ANSI/IACET 1-2013 standard and application, also where IACET is today, and then the big question for everybody, why choose IACET, and why become accredited. So here is IACET's overview, which was recently revised by the IACET Board of Directors. Is a global workforce of lifelong learners whose formalized education and training equip them to produce a positive economic impact and fuel social progress. Directly underneath the vision is our mission, which is something our board also revised within the past year or so. And the mission is to advance the global workforce by providing the standard framework for quality learning and development through accreditation. So IACET has the American National Standard for Continuing Education and Training, and we use that standard as a foundation for our Authorized Provider Accreditation Program. So now we're going to get to a brief history of IACET. I'm sure you haven't already. We do have this on our website. But IACET was created back in the late 60s. It wasn't called IACET at that point. There was actually a task force that was commissioned by the United States Bureau of Education, which we would now refer to as the U.S. Department of Education. And the task was to determine if there was a way to measure non-credit activities in continuing education and training. So a couple years later, this task force group, which comprised of like professors and universities and nonprofit associations, came together, and 2 years later, the term CEU was born. And the term CEU stands for Continuing Education Unit. And it was defined as 10 contact hours, equating to the 1 continuing education unit. So then 4 years later, the Continuing Education Unit Criteria and Guidelines was published, and this basically outlined the criteria for organizations to be able to issue continuing education units to their learners. A few years later, the Council on the Continuing Education Unit was created, and they were encouraged to become a certifying body. A couple decades later from that, the International Association for Continuing Education and Training was developed, and that's what we are today. And then, of course, just 1 year later after that, the official Certified Provider Program was implemented and offered for our first Certified Provider Program. And I believe the first one was the Centers for Disease and Control in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm pretty sure that's it. And then years later, the Certified Provider Program was renamed as the Authorized Provider Program, and the IACET Continuing Education Unit was then created as well. And many years later, in 2005, the IACET Board of Directors decided they wanted the criteria and guidelines to be reviewed and approved by a third party. So the board decided to develop a standards council, and we refer to this group as the ICSD, which stands for the IACET Council on Standards and Development. This group was responsible for refining, improving, updating what was the criteria and guidelines for continuing education units. And then IACET went through the process and became an approved ANSI standards developing organization. And then a year later, what was the criteria and guidelines was approved by ANSI and is now known as the ANSI/IACET 1-2013 Standard and Continuing Education and Training. The reason why you see, now that you see it, sorry about not changing the slides there, but the reason why you see on the screen now that there's a 2007 and 2013 standards is because since we are accredited by ANSI, which is, or accredited by ANSI as a standards developing organization, we develop ANSI's essential requirements to reevaluate our standard a minimum of once every 5 years. So the first ANSI IACET standard was created in 2007, but we've since revised that standard, which was approved in 2013. So we've gone through a little bit of the history, so I know you're all happy about that one. So let's go to the ANSI IACET standards. Here is just a visual of the categories that are addressed in the standard. And we have 10 categories on the standard, and you can see all 10 of them there. On the little mouse marker, you see how they all fall into line, one big old circle. So we're looking at organizations to like identify the needs, develop the learning outcomes based on the identified needs that have been identified by the organization, developing the content to accomplish the learning outcomes. Then the delivery of the training, the demonstration of learning outcomes, all there. So how does your organization assess other learning outcomes? And then, of course, the final evaluation piece. We're looking at how your organization evaluates the program to measure the effectiveness of it. So now let's go into the first category, category number 1. And category number 1 addresses the organization, the continuing education and training organization as a whole. Here we're looking at what's your mission statement, or a set of goals that describes the intent within the organization to continuing education and training. And in terms of what the application requirement is, we're looking for you to submit your mission statement to us. So that's really what we're looking for. And also making sure that the statement relates to continuing education and training, and not just a broad, like an overarching statement or like a mission statement that may only cover the parent company of your organization. And what we're looking for is a specific mission statement for that particular training department or unit within the company that wants to get IACET accreditation. Now we'll go off to category 2, and that addresses the responsibility and control. And here, an organizational chart on the screen. We're looking for who within the organization has the role and responsibility to ensure all your programs adhere to the ANSI IACET standard. We ask for process documentation for how you actually assess your program to ensure that it meets the standard. We look for evidence in terms of completed forms or worksheets to actually show that the process you indicated is operational and that it has been implemented as well. Also, in this category, we're looking at job descriptions for the position that is responsible for conducting the review process and ensuring compliance. This, of course, we ask for, or we also ask for the organizational chart showing the department and specifically the individual or individuals that's responsible for adherence to the standard. And then finally, what we refer to as the elements within the category. The last element of category 2 is the calculation of the CEUs. In the standard, we have the formula for how organizations must calculate CEUs, and here we want the organization to provide the process documentation on how you would determine the number of CEUs for a particular course or seminar, and then of course provide that or provide an actual calculation to determine how those CEUs were awarded, and also addressing any changes to those calculations when maybe the delivery format has changed, or if based on like a pilot study for the training there's some tweaking that needs to happen, or you find out that the course ends up being a little bit shorter than you might have thought before. What we want is your organization to have a process in place to address the calculation of CEUs and recalculation should there be any changes. Now we're off to category 3. Category 3, we address the learning environment and support systems. So here we want to make sure that all the materials, educational materials, are accurate and up to date, that you have a technological support system, and that they're all in good working order. So here we want you to explain your process, like have a process documentation, and then provide evidence that these processes have been implemented within your organization. So like a completed worksheet or course showing the materials are up to date, that you have the resources and technology in place to support the learning, and also addressing in that process the learning environment. Making sure it's conducive to learning and to that particular course that you deliver is also important for the learning environment. And when I say learning environment, a lot of you might be thinking like, well, we only do like online or e-learning, so there's no physical learning environment. But actually, in this case, there really is a learning environment. It's the virtual learning world. So for e-learning, we are referring to something like maybe the platform, like the LMS platform that your virtual environment that you use. Or maybe the formatting and programming and the support that your organization provides in that virtual environment to ensure the person taking that course can meet the established outcomes that you have for your course. And in terms of how to document this for the purpose of the application, we're looking at some type of design document or design matrix that clearly shows the learning environment has been addressed and that the document verifies the learning environment has been specified for that particular training. So now we're in Category 4, which is the learning event planning. And this is a big one because we tend to find a lot of organizations struggle just a bit with this category. So here is the needs analysis portion of the standards. So we're looking for you to have a process in place to identify the need and then document that in the form of a design document that summarizes the need that your organization has evaluated, and then explaining the learning outcomes results, explaining the learning outcome results so that that they were identified by those needs. So here we're also not only looking at the needs analysis, but we also want your organization to address the information that you have available to your learners. So all the way from when they register, then all the way through evaluation and post-program evaluation of your courses. So here, when an individual has registered for a course, either online or in person, we want to be sure that the key information about the learning event is made available to them prior to the event. So we're looking at your organization, we're looking to make sure your organization has everything from like the event description, the logistics, the learning outcomes, like how learners will be assessed, that's an important one, and other details and logistical information that your organization would like to make available to learners prior to them registering for your course. So basically announcing everything about your course, you know, what you'll learn, what you'll take away from it, and how you provide those learning outcomes, all announced before they even attend, so they have all the necessary information. So halfway there now, we're at Category 5, and that's learning outcomes. For Category 5, we want to know what the learners will be able to exhibit or demonstrate at the end of your learning event. So this specific category in the standard only has one element, and here we're just looking for the organization to submit a design document. And the design document that was initially requested from you in the previous category, Category 4, that can actually be used to satisfy Category 5 as well. So we're just looking to make sure that you have a clear and measurable learning outcome or learning outcomes for your course. Okay, Category 6, and that is planning and instructional personnel. So for this, we want to make sure that that you as an organization have individuals that are involved in the design, development, and delivery, as well as the evaluation for your learning events, and that they're qualified to perform their tasks within your organization. So IACET doesn't have any guidelines on what qualified means for the qualified person to perform tasks within your organization. This is actually just something that that the organization needs to establish as the subject matter experts. So for here, we just request that you have a process in place, and we have, oh, I'm sorry, excuse me, and that you have a process in place, and that we ask for you to help us identify what your criteria are for a qualified candidate. So what the competencies are that you expect from your program planners or instructors, and then submit like resumes, job descriptions, credentials that reflect the skills required to that specific role within your organization. And then we also look to see if you have a process in place to evaluate your trainers, instructors, or instructional designers. And also making sure that you have a record of professional development, and to make sure that it's up to date, that you're up to date with that. So I believe in this category, though, we also have a few policies, and those policies would relate to everything from addressing your organization with in the way of discrimination, policies that address proprietary interests, intellectual property rights, can't talk anymore. And then also some of these policies your organization, might already have. So it could be in like an employee manual handbook, or excuse me, it might reside with your HR department. So you can review those, make sure that they address the proper continuing education and training piece that it should. So now off to category 7, which is the content and instructional method. This is a visual that you can see here on the screen now. And this is just a sample design document that lists the name of the lesson, also the amount of time allotted for that specific session. It also lists the topic, the learning outcome methods, the assessment, and as well as any notes that you'd like to provide. So in category 7, we're looking for your organization to make sure there's a linkage between the established learning outcomes, which is the method in which you'll be delivering the course, the teaching styles and learning styles that you'll be accommodating, as well as the assessment method and performance criteria to ensure your learners achieve the stated learning outcomes for your course. So again, as you see here, this is a sample design document. It shows the lesson, the amount of time, content, learning outcomes, instructional method, and so on and so on. And again, you'll receive a recording of this presentation, and then also a PDF version of this PowerPoint. So you can definitely go over this at your leisure if you'd like after today's webinar. But now we're on to category 8, and this is another big one. In here, we're looking at you have a planned activities to assess the learning of your individuals and to make sure that they're able to meet the learning outcomes. And this can be done in a variety of ways. Some people think an assessment has to be in the form of a test, but it all has to do with what your learning outcomes are and making sure the learning outcomes and the assessment method are aligned. So for example, if your learning outcomes is to list the 10 categories of the ANSI IACET standard, the assessment method could be to have individual learners actually list those 10 categories. So here we're just making sure your organization has some sort of assessment established and that there is an objective way to measure the learning or their learners needs to be objective. Can't talk anymore, so I apologize. But the good thing is now we're on category 9. So category 9 is awarding CEUs and maintaining learner records. So does your organization have a system in place? It can be an LMS that keeps record of your training and the learners that go through your training, or it depends on the organization, like how large is it, what size how big is the budget that you have for your organization. We've seen everything from organizations that have like very robust LMS software, and then we have smaller, like mom and pop type of authorized providers that are still working in Excel or some like Microsoft-based database. So as long as your organization is able to maintain records and able to extract information regarding an individual's training record, then your organization should be able to meet that requirement within Category 9. Also in Category 9, we address your process for maintaining the training records that we require that organizations keep records for a minimum of 7 years. But in this day and age, since everything is pretty much electronic as it is, a lot of the organizations don't really have a problem maintaining the records indefinitely because of technology the way it is now. But our standard does state that organizations must keep record for a minimum of 7 years. So we have a few policies your organization is expected to submit inside this category as well. So this is related to ensuring the privacy and security of your learning records. So making sure that you have a process and policy addressing privacy, and maybe a process for your like adventurous personnel for how to maintain the records and how to extract those records. And now we're on to the last category, Category 10, which is program evaluation. Here we want to make sure that you have a comprehensive, systematic evaluation in place. We don't necessarily want you to only address one aspect of the training. We want it to be comprehensive, and that it addresses whether the student felt they met the learning outcomes, whether the instructor was effective in delivering the training. You can address the learning environment. You can also include open-ended questions, possibly some like how the individual learner would be able to apply what they learned in their day job. So we just want to make sure that you have a learning evaluation tool that addresses all aspects of the training or of your training. And in the last part of Category 10, the last part of Category 10 is asking that your organization compile evaluations and shares those evaluations and results with the instructor and all the individuals. So share those evaluations and results with the instructor and all individuals who are involved in the development and delivery of that particular training. So, got that over with. So that was the big part. So now I'm just going to give you a little bit about IACET today. So let's see what we have going on today in IACET. On the screen now you can see IACET's organizational chart. This is us here. You can see the IACET membership at the top, and below them are the board of directors. And the board of directors has a small executive committee group, and you'll see that on the right-hand side there of that group. Below them, on the third level, all the way to the left, we have the IACET executive director, and then below them is the IACET staff. Then we have the commission, which is in the middle, and this is the group of folks who actually review the applications and conduct the site visits. So they're very, very important to IACET here. And then to the right of that is the Council on Standards Development, and as I mentioned earlier, they are the group responsible for maintaining and updating the IACET standard. And then below the commission is the Commission Executive Committee, and they are a leadership group within the commission that meets on a regular basis, and they discuss authorized provider statuses, the AP application, recruitment of other commissioners, and so on, so that IACET essentially has 3 leadership committees, which is the board, the commission, and the Council on Standards Development. So we have 2 membership categories. There are the authorized providers, and this group, this is the group that actually goes through the application process and they become accredited. So there are all different types of authorized providers with IACET. We represent all different industries, national, state, local, international government, nonprofit, and the type of training delivered by our authorized provider membership is also as diverse. So we have in-person training, distance learning, blended. We're really all over the place. The other membership category that we have, though, is the individual membership. And many of the individual members that we have are former board members and commissioners that have retired from their own authorized provider organization. So they still want to be involved, or they also might want to be a part of the board or commission again, or they just want to be involved in some sort of IACET activity. All they would need to do is just become an individual member, and they wouldn't have to go through the authorized provider status. So yeah, if you ever want to be involved with IACET, you would either need to become an authorized provider or an individual member to be eligible. So for IACET today, the purpose of continuing education and training, now mainly what we've found is professionals within particular industries hold some type of license or certification, and licensing bodies impose continuing education requirements on members who hold a license to practice within a profession. So usually individuals who have a license or professional certification are required to renew every like 2 to 3 years, depending on what the requirements are. So they choose to take a professional development or continuing education, or they try to get continuing education units to not only renew, but also expand their knowledge, also their knowledge base, and also stay up to date on new developments within their specific profession. Now in the United States, unfortunately, each state licensing board has their own requirements. So for example, like the Professional Engineering Board, each has their own requirements. Some are more stringent than others. Some have their own approval program, or they'll only accept continuing education from a list that they have gathered in-house. So right now in terms of IACET, there are several states that have IACET listed in their regulations, and they will recognize and approve CEUs from an IACET authorized provider. So that's very important when it comes to CEUs. A lot of people should know that it really comes down to who accepts those CEUs. So if you're ever doing a little bit of research on your organization to see if we would be useful or somebody else would be useful to your organization, see if our CEUs, our accreditation, would be helpful to your members, or if there would be another organization that would be a little bit more helpful in those CEUs that you would award. Would your students be able to use that in the profession or industry that they're in? So now the last question, which everybody's probably asking themselves right now: why choose IACET? And again, I'm sure that many of you are thinking about IACET as a possibility, or maybe you're interested in learning more about us for a different client. But IACET gives your organization the necessary competitive advantage. And in a recent survey, we found that 88% of IACET authorized providers believe their IACET authorized provider accreditation lends credibility to their organization. So it gives them that upper hand, that advantage over others. And then we found out that 74% of IACET authorized provider customers applied IACET CEUs to licensure or certification programs. So those numbers weren't actually surprising when we found them out, at least from my perspective. But we found that more and more employers are seeking individuals who have a certification, and someone with that certification means that they had to obtain quality continuing education from somewhere, and we find that a majority of our folks see value in both the standard and credibility of that standard, as well as the ability to issue those CEUs. And because the CEUs are recognized and accepted by boards and certifying bodies, they definitely see value in that AP accreditation. Going backwards now. There we go. And now we're at the, what are the benefits to individual learners? So those attending an IACET authorized provider course, why would they benefit from that? Well, first of all, it's the CEU is transferable. So if you take a course like, say, New York, you take it in New York City, for professional engineer, and you receive those credits, but then you move to somewhere south like Texas. You would still be able to apply those CEUs towards relicensure in Texas. Also, continuing education and training provider, or the continuing education training provider, their choice is made easier for individuals if they see that the IACET authorized provider logo in the standard. It ensures that the training they'll be taking is of high quality, and also that assurance of record keeping, because again, all authorized providers are required to maintain learner records for a minimum of 7 years. So you should be able to go back to any authorized provider that you've taken a training or a course with and request a transcript from that organization, and they'll be able to provide that for you, of course granted that it's within 7 years of taking that course. And then we have the benefits of the authorized provider. So why would this benefit you to become accredited with IACET? First, we have the self-evaluation. You can use the application to improve your processes. We also recently developed a pre-assessment checklist. But now that I'm thinking about it, I think it's probably been out for just over a year now that I think about it, so maybe it's not, hasn't been that recent. But the checklist is for organizations that are interested in becoming an IACET authorized provider, and it outlines the 10 categories and asks key questions to have you evaluate what your current policies and processes are, and kind of help you determine where the gaps are and what new processes you'll need to develop and put in place prior to investing the money into the process. So you can also find those documents. It's under the application process page on the website, IACET website. Also, if you go to the main page, you can click on Become an Authorized Provider, or you can go to the blue toolbar at the top of the screen, and under Accreditation, gives you a drop-down box, and the third option down is the application process. Both options will take you to the same page. Excuse me. But the application process page shows you the step-by-step process on what it takes to become an authorized provider. And the very, very helpful part of that is underneath step number 1 of the application process page. It has like about 3 hyperlinks, the self-assessment checklist, the application project plan, as well as the accreditation guide. And those are complimentary for you to download. And those will give you a great idea of how far along you are at becoming an IACET authorized provider without even having to making a purchase. So you can see if you're ready to become an AP, or if you still need to, introduce some things to your program before you can become an AP. Those documents will really, really give you a good idea of how far along you are with the IACET standard, and if it's wise to make a purchase right away for it, or if it's something you need to implement beforehand. But your program is evaluated by experts, so there are commissioners that review the application, and they are a group of 29 subject matter experts in continuing education, and they come from all different backgrounds. So we get a nice sorted field of commissioners there, so we can basically be able to understand all the organizations that submit an application to us. So another benefit to the authorized provider accreditation is you'll gain credibility with your colleagues as well as customers, because they'll see that seal of approval on your organization website or other promotional materials. And then, of course, you can, like I just mentioned, use the IACET accreditation as a marketing tool. And we encourage all of our authorized providers, the authorized provider logo, and approved statements saying that they're an IACET AP, and to use some of the marketing tools that we have available to our members, and that's located in the member section of the website. So when you log into the IACET website with your email address and password, you'll see some different tools that you can use, but once you become an authorized provider, you'll have some additional options that will open up, one of them being the logo and approved statements. So it's a way that you can log into the IACET website, You can pull the logo from the members section there, as well as we have a short version and a long version of approved statements showing that you're an IACET authorized provider, and that, of course, you can use those. So here are the marketing materials that we provide. Like I was mentioning, the logo and approved statement, and a lot of our authorized providers will use the logo on their brochures and websites, also certificates of completion, and training records. So those are great places to add your logo as well. We also provide tools to leverage your accreditation, also provide you with, or will provide you with an authorized provider plaque once you become approved. Also in that, we'll send you a link to the IACET website directory, as well as we feature opportunities on the IACET homepage, the bi-weekly newsletter, and our blog. So you can use any of those avenues as well to promote your organization or add something to IACET here as well. So I would say if you like to do blogs, please reach out to me. We'd love to. We post a blog on our website. We just started this a couple months ago, and we post a blog on our website every other week. So if you're interested in doing that, please feel free to reach out to me here. But now let's get to the big one that everybody's asking about, the money. So the cost of authorized provider accreditation. And as I mentioned, if you're brand new to this and you're considering IACET accreditation, I highly recommend that you download that pre-assessment checklist that we were mentioning before. And I'll also include that in the follow-up email so nobody's thrown off by it. But yeah, the pre-assessment checklist is a great tool to look at before having to purchase the application. But if you would like to proceed, the cost of obtaining the standard and AP application package is $450. There is an optional authorized provider workshop as well as an e-learning course that's available should you need some additional assistance with the application. The workshop is a full-day workshop where there's an instructor, an IACET commissioner, that walks you through the training. And the workshop was updated probably within the last year and a half or so, right after we introduced the new 2013 version of the standard. So once we introduced the 2013 standard, we felt that we should also update our workshop, which is now a blended event since we include the e-learning modules as well. So there's an e-learning module component for the workshop, so that individuals are required to complete the modules prior to attending the live session workshop. So that way individuals that are coming in to the workshop, they have the same information and they're at the pretty much like the same level of playing field. Because as we all know, some folks have a lot more experience than others. Like they might have a lot of experience in adult education, or they might be like an instructional designer, so they already know all of this information. While there could be others that are brand new, don't have any of that background. So what we try to do is to try to level out that playing field. We provided these 3 e-learning modules that you'll receive access to within 24 hours of registering for a workshop. And it could be a workshop for next month, it could be a workshop for 6 months away. But after registering for that workshop, no matter which one it is, within 24 hours you'll receive login access for these e-learning modules. So this is also a great tool that will help get you started with the application so you can start completing it. So once you get to the workshop, hopefully it can be just more of something where you're just going through all the parts of the category and what's requested, and then just kind of checking the answers that you already provided to see if they're on the same path or if maybe there's something that you need to work on. But of course also the workshops, you can sit down with the facilitator and go over some of your questions. You can even bring in your application. They won't be able to go through the entire thing, but any questions that you have on it, that's a great place where you can be face-to-face with that person, and they can provide you with all that information right then and there. But you can also purchase the e-learning modules as a standalone, separately, just by itself. And this is a great thing that if you're unable to travel, like to a workshop, If you're unable to do that, but you still want to receive all the necessary information to make the application a little bit easier to understand and complete, then the e-learning modules might be a great resource for you to use. But we also have the application assistance webinar, which isn't listed on there, but that is a free thing that we do every second Wednesday of every month. The application assistance webinar is facilitated by an IACET commissioner, so they're a great resource for any questions that you might have about the application or about the process. And it's an hour-long webinar. The first half kind of goes over what to include in the application, but the second half is to answer any questions that you might have. So really, if you have one or two questions about about something particular inside the application or about the process, you can ask the commissioner right then and there on the phone call, and they can help you with your inquiry. So that's a free thing that we also offer as well. So if it's something where you have just a couple questions about the application, that would be a great one to register for. But you need to have purchase the application package before you can register for that workshop. I'm sorry, for that webinar. So after the e-learning modules, if you're not big on traveling, those are, again, a great resource. But once you invest that initial $450 to purchase the application package, there is an application submission fee. So once you're ready to submit your application, you'll need to also make a payment of $3,250 if you're a new applicant. Or if you're renewing your authorized provider status, the cost would be $2,500. And this is an all-inclusive fee, meaning that what you get in that fee is 2 application reviews. It also covers all administrative fees, as well as it also covers all site visit expenses. So if there's a site visit, well, there is a site visit component within the application. And the reason that there's an asterisk, as you can see next to the 3250 as well as the 2500, excuse me, is because if you're an international organization, then you're subject to additional fees. So the cost for traveling out there, you know, the hotel and food and everything, if it passes the allocated amount for the site visit, then we would just bill that organization the additional fees. And again, that applies more to international organizations, not domestic. And then, of course, once you become an authorized provider, you'll have an annual accreditation fee to pay, and that's in the amount of $835. So once you become an AP, your authorized provider status will start right there with your first annual renewal fee. And say if you become approved in February, your accreditation will be from February until January. That's basically your yearly cycle. So you would expect to make a payment basically before February every year if you become an AP approved in February. Of course, any questions that you have, I can answer them once we get to the Q&A portion. But of course, after the webinar, you can always email me or give me a phone call with anything like that. So almost finished here, but this is the authorized provider application process. And once your organization conducts the self-evaluation or the self-assessment to determine what your organization needs to put in place, you'll then need to complete the application, then submit it to the IACET offices. The application will be assigned to 2 IACET commissioners. One will be selected as the lead reviewer, the other will be the site visitor. And each person is given 4 weeks to review the application. So they review it independently first by themselves, and then they would get together and consult. So they would share notes, and then the person who's the lead reviewer consolidates that report that they put together. And then we call that report the initial review report. And on the form, on your application form, we can either, or after they put that report together, they'll either approve the application for a site visit, or the application will be deferred pending additional information. So if your organization is deferred pending additional information, first of all, don't get thrown off by that because that happens a lot of times. But if your organization is deferred depending on the additional information, you're given an opportunity to address the specific section that the commissioners have questions about. So you're given back the report, and you have 30 days to address those specific items. And it gets those once that's complete, you would then return it to IACET, and that information is reviewed by the IACET or by the commission team, and they'll be reviewing that for a second time. And so hopefully after that second review, your organization will be approved for a site visit, and you'll receive a notice from the IACET staff, and you'll be assigned a site visitor, and that site visitor will contact you directly and set up a date and time that will work for both of you. And the purpose of the site visit is to, first of all, visit your site, make sure that it really is there, that you are what you say you are. But then to also sit down with the individuals responsible for ensuring adherence and putting together the application, and also those who are involved in putting together the application, but then also just to verify that everything in the application is accurate. So this is also the site visit commissioner opportunity to learn a little bit more about your program, also for you to tell your story and to kind of walk the commissioner through the application, everything from the needs analysis to all the way to the evaluation. So once the site visitor finishes that site visit, the site visit can really take anywhere from like 3 to 6 hours, and that depends on who the commissioner needs to speak with, like do they just need to speak with one person or an entire team. Also, if the organization decides to put on some type of like brief presentation about the organization, they want to do that for the commissioner, that could also add a little bit more to that time. It just really all depends. It varies for all organizations. The site visiting commissioner then will complete a site visit report, and that can take anywhere from like a week or a week and a half. And that site visit report is then sent to the lead reviewer. The lead reviewer will then complete a report and then sends that report to the IACET staff. And then the IACET staff will then notify the applicant regarding the final determination, so if they're approved or if they're not approved. And then also when it comes to the deferred information that you have 30 days to complete and then submit back to the commission, this would all be through email form. This would not, you wouldn't have to put together an all new application, spiral bound it, or anything like that. It would just be the specific categories or elements that the commissioners need additional information on, and then you would just supply that information, and again, all through electronic email form. So you won't have to worry about putting anything else together there. And then, of course, once the organization receives the final determination, at the time they will receive access to the IACET collateral information about IACET compliance, just to make sure that they follow the IACET standard during their 5 years of accreditation. So I think I'm just about out of oxygen, so let's see if any of you guys have any questions that you have for me. And also, just to let everybody know, our offices moved at the end of September, so we always want to make sure everyone's aware of this, just in case there's anything that they have here. So with that, I will first go over some questions that have been submitted to me. Then I will open up some phone lines. I know that we're just past the 2 o'clock time here, and I apologize because that's on me here for the technical difficulties that we are experiencing here. So I'm happy to stay on the line as long as you are, and of course go over any other questions that you have here. Okay, so this first one comes from Jennifer Gable. She's asking, Category 9 requirements state that records must be maintained for a minimum of 7 years. This is in conflict with our state mandate record retention policy, which we have to follow. Can this requirement be waived if it does not comply with state federal mandates? Individual employee records are kept for the life of the employee, but course materials and rosters, for example, only kept for 3 years. By law, we can't keep those records longer. Jennifer, and I will also open up your phone line here, so bear with me for just 1 second in case you wanted to add anything. There is a possibility that that we could change something, not change something where everything needs to be done, but when it comes to something like state and federal mandates, it's really on a per basis. We know that there's sometimes we have government organizations that can't provide all the necessary information that we ask for because of, again, what their policy is. So it really comes down to a case-by-case basis if it's something that needs to be changed. So when it comes to this, I'm not completely sure if that's something that we can waive right off the bat. I would have to check with our commission and board to see if that is something that is possible. So the commissioners that would actually do that. So Jennifer, I would actually ask for you to email me after this, and then with your question, and I'll be able to reply to that as soon as I get an answer here for you. So sorry I wasn't able to answer the entire question, but at least the semi-good news about it is that we have had to make changes before when it comes to an organization's policy. So we'll just see what we can do to work around that if it is possible. The next question here I got is from Jason Cohen. Jason is asking, and I will also open up his phone line if you'd like to ask anything. How many states is IACET in? Which states? Is there a list? How many universities use IACET states? Well, we're really in every state. We don't really have a thing where it says Idaho doesn't accept IACET and Nebraska doesn't accept IACET. We don't have anything like that. It really comes down to what that state licensure or certification board for whichever particular profession or industry that it's in, will they accept the IACET CEU? Will they accept a CEU from an IACET authorized provider? So really, we don't really have a thing on which states IACET's in. It's really everywhere. We're international. We're overseas as well. It really comes down to who will accept the IACET CEU, and then also for that particular industry and profession. And we do have a list of IACET authorized providers, and we also have a list of who accepts the IACET CEU. The only thing to keep into consideration is that we add a disclaimer to the top of the page for who accepts the IACET CEU, because we just don't have the manpower and resources for every single school, organization, license and certification boards out there, and all the different industries and professions that accept the IACET CEU. So we have a disclaimer stating that that this is just a list that we've compiled from what we found out. But in case there's an organization or company or board that isn't listed on our who accepts IACET CEUs, it doesn't necessarily mean that they don't accept it. We just might not know if they do or not. So it would just be to reach out to that either company, licensing board, whoever's receiving those CEUs to see if they accept IACET CEUs. And if not, what CEUs do they accept? It would be better to go through that, or maybe you don't have to go through an accreditation at all, and they'll accept the CEUs that you provide for them. And then when it comes to how many universities use IACET in the United States, unfortunately I don't know that right off the top of my head. I know that we have some universities. I would say that most universities, though, when they deliver a continuing education course, usually they offer CEUs, and usually those would be accepted for the CEUs that they're delivering those professions or industries to. So we do have some universities that are IACET authorized providers, but I couldn't tell you the exact number right off the top of my head. We also have a list, and you can actually search that on the website on locate an IACET authorized provider. And I completely forgot to mention this, but to find this, if you go to the IACET homepage, IACET.org, And under the blue toolbar, under continuing education units, the drop-down box will show the second and fourth option. The second option is to locate an IACET authorized provider. The fourth option is to locate those who accept the IACET CEU. Both of those are located under continuing education units on our website. And to locate an IACET authorized provider, you can type in their name, the state that they're in, or their category. Unfortunately, it's not a very big search engine here. So really it just kind of has the organization and where they're located, and for most of the time their website as well, so you can go straight there. But if it's a particular course or something like that where it's a little bit more specific, unfortunately there's not a way to look at it unless you know the organization name or the location, of course the industry that they're in. But then you can also just go there and just click on search without entering anything, and it will show you all the IACET authorized providers. And then there's also some authorized providers that don't want us to list their organization on our website, so that's also something to take into consideration if you're looking for an authorized provider. Jason, hopefully I was able to answer most of your question there, but sorry, I didn't get the correct number of the universities that are IACET authorized providers. I'm going to say it's Medessa, and it has another question. This may be covered later, but what are the costs associated with becoming an authorized provider? I'm guessing that this question was written while I was going through there, but that's not a problem. And just to let everybody know again, we will have this, everybody will have a copy of this PowerPoint presentation as well as the recording. But then you can see here on the screen, these are the costs of becoming an IACET authorized provider: $450 for the application package, $3,250 when you submit the application package, and then once approved as an authorized provider, you'll have a yearly fee of $835. And then, of course, the $500 and the $250 for the e-learning modules and the $500 for the workshop are just optional. You don't need to pay those. Those are not requirements. You're not required to go to our workshop. You're not required to purchase an e-learning course. Those are just if you need additional help with the application, additional assistance. But then also take into consideration our application assistance webinar every second Wednesday of every month, and that is complimentary. So it's a lot better to go to something for free than to have to pay for anything. But if it's something where it's more than one or two questions that you need help with, then of course the e-learning modules and the workshop would work a little bit better for you. So Medessa, hope I was able to answer your question there. From Amy, this is another tough one that I'm not completely sure about, but what percentage of applicants achieve AP accreditation? Now that kind of ranges. I'm not completely sure of the official figures. I'm getting a lot of number questions here, how many and what percentage. So I apologize, I'm not a complete expert at of all of our numbers that we have. But when it comes to actually applying to become an authorized provider, I would probably say 95% are able to complete the accreditation. If you just purchased the application, we have a bunch of organizations that have just purchased the application in standard but never submitted the application to start the accreditation process to become approved as an AP. So that's a little bit different as well. But for those that actually submit the application to become an authorized provider, I mean, I would probably say it's somewhere between the 95 to 99% range, because I've been here since July of 2011. Yeah, I've been here for a while. And so with that time, I haven't even seen a handful of organizations that haven't done it. I think it really comes down to once an organization has paid that $3,250 fee when they submitted the application, I have a feeling that since they've already given up that refundable fee, that they're just going to keep pursuing it no matter what. So when you submit the application to start the review process and additional information is needed, you complete that additional information, the commissioners review it for a second time, and then after the second time they say, we still can't approve you as an IACET authorized provider, we still need additional information, you'll actually be charged $400 for the commissioners to review the application for a third time. And that'll keep happening if they need to, if they need additional information past that. I would say since I've been here since 2011, I would probably say there's probably been, from what I've known, probably about like maybe probably about 5 or 6 organizations that have had to pay that $400 additional fee. I mean, we provide resources like, again, the workshop. We just started these e-learning modules months ago. And we also have the application assistance webinar, and we always try to come up with any type of documents like the self-assessment checklist, which is made at the beginning of the year of 2014, and like the application project plan. We created these kind of documents to show before you make any purchases how far along your organization is in line with the standards, so you have a great idea before you make any purchases on where you stand. And then, of course, once you purchase the application assistance webinars, the authorized provider workshops, the e-learning modules, all these different things to help you complete the application. So once somebody has submitted the application to start the review process, yeah, I would probably say, now that I think about it, probably around like the 99% where they do it. It's a little different from those that have purchased the application but haven't submitted an application at all. So, Amy, hopefully I was able to answer your question there as well. This one also comes from Medessa. Once you become an authorized provider, what additional steps, if any, do you have to take when developing new courses? In other words, do authorized providers have to submit materials, i.e. learning objectives, evaluation assessment methods, etc., for each course developed? Good question, Medessa. The answer is no. You do not need to submit that information. Excuse me. Once you become an authorized provider, the initial review of the application, which takes at least 4 weeks to complete, as well as the site visit that we do all of these things to make sure that you're going to comply with the IACET standard during your 5 years of accreditation. So that kind of first gives us a good clue or a good idea of how efficient you are with that. So once you become an authorized provider, any courses that you want to offer IACET CEUs for, you would just have to make sure that you're complying with the standards. So that's also where that whole honor system comes in here, and again, why we conduct this site visit, so we can get that face-to-face impression, conversation, and getting to know that person a little bit better instead of just hearing voices on the phone. And we want to make sure that you'll comply with the standards. So any courses that you offer after you become an authorized provider, just making sure that they're structured in compliance with the IACET standard. You don't have to submit anything to us for approvals. That's all on you. You're the one to have the power and responsibility of keeping track of your attendees, as well as making sure that your courses are following the IACET standards. So we like to kind of let you have that power, so we don't want to have to look over your shoulder every 2 seconds or anything like that. We want to make sure that you're the ones that are the subject matter experts. You're the pros at what you're delivering. We're just going to show you on the best way to structure it so the attendee receives all the necessary and accurate information. So hopefully I was able to answer your question there. I got a 2-parter here from Matthew Ross. Matthew Ross is asking, what is the success rate of applicants, and what is the process if the organization is not approved? So I was mentioning this before, but I have no problem in reiterating that the success rate once they submit the application is pretty good. Since they pay that fee, and again, when our commissioners review these applications as well, this is good for everyone to know, is that they want to make sure that that you can get through this process. They're not trying to display or mark everything as wrong as possible to make sure it's as close to the standard as possible. Well, what they want to do is that if something's not correct or something's not aligned with the standard, when they're doing the review, they're going to point you in the right direction. So if you have additional information that you need to add to your application for that deferred additional information, they'll they'll show you, okay, this needs additional information, and then they'll explain why. So you added this chart, but what we're really looking for is this. So it's not just like, okay, this is wrong, put up a new one. We're going to try to help you push in the right direction as best as possible, because our commissioners are volunteers of other continuing education and training providers throughout the United States. So this is this is not their main job that they have. So they're actually volunteering to help us with this. So for them to have to review something over and over and over is something they don't want to do. They want to try to push in the right direction, get you on the same level as everyone else, so you can become an authorized provider as soon as possible. And so I have another question. If our courses are not 10 hours in length, are they able to be considered as partial CEUs? No, we do not offer partial CEUs. So we calculate the IACET CEU as 10 contact hours equals 1 IACET CEU. So if I'm offering a 1, a 2, or a 3-hour course, I would be awarding 0.1 IACET CEUs, 0.2 IACET CEUs, 0.3 IACET CEUs for my course. And then if I accumulate the CEUs and I get up to 10 hours of contact time from an IACET authorized provider, then that would be receiving 1 full CEU. So another thing to consider, and I get this question all the time from people, is questions about CEUs. What's a CEU? Who accepts it? What's the regulations on it? CEUs are a public domain. Anyone can offer them. I can offer a typing course tomorrow and I'll say it's a 2-hour typing course and you'll receive 2 CEUs for it. I can do that. You can do it. Anybody can do that since they're open to everyone. The big question comes down to who will accept that CEU. So anyone can offer it, but who's going to accept it? And that organization, that company, that standard board, that university, whoever it might be that's receiving those CEUs, they're going to look at, first of all, the institution that's delivering the course and their content, but also are they accredited by an organization? How are they calculating their CEUs? Are they following a certain standard for delivering their courses? They look at these different things. So once you get an IACET authorized provider status, that accreditation, it shows a lot more legitimacy to your organization as well as your courses, that you've gone through a third party, you're following a certain standard, and that you've gone through a process to make sure that the courses that you're delivering to others are accurate, and again, that they're following a certain standard for delivering those courses. So that's where it really comes down to. So we only offer partial. We offer 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, 0.5, all the way up to 10 CEUs. So others might have a different way of calculating CEUs. Organizations can have all different kinds of ways. Again, you can say, like, I received 2 CEUs from this organization, from an IACET authorized provider, meaning I took 20 hours of course time. And then I also received 2 CEUs from this other organization delivering the same course. What gives? What that organization, company, university, whoever's accepting that CEU, they're not really looking at that CEU portion. What they're really looking at is that contact time, those contact hours. So you could have, two IACET CEUs from one place and 2 CEUs from another, but it could be, but the IACET ones would be 20 hours of contact time, and the 2 CEUs from the other organization might just be 2 hours. So it's a real big difference between the two. So the CEU portion isn't as big to those who are receiving the CEUs. It really comes down to the amount of contact time, the contact hours for that. So take a little breath, and hopefully that answered your question as well. Thanks. I have one here from Sage Salvo. First of all, I love that name. And Sage is asking, what is the timeline for the application fee, the 2 separate steps? So the timeline for the application fee is once you purchase the standard and AP application package, you have 2 years from the date of purchase to submit that application. So if I purchase it today, I have 2 years from now to submit that application. And we do this for those that have are just starting out as an organization, don't have the enough of a roster and of too many attendees to pay the fees and everything that we ask of. So what they do is they start off by delivering courses, structured in the way of the IACET standards. So once they start building that audience, they can then apply as an IACET authorized provider, say like a year and a half down the road, and then since their course is already in line with the standard, that way they can already become an authorized provider a little bit easier than others. So yeah, you have 2 years to, for when you purchase the application to submit it. And then once you submit the application, it's about 4 to 5 weeks for the initial review process. Then after, you'll either need additional information, which gives you another 30 days to do, or you'll be approved as a site visit. And then, of course, that time just comes down to the availability of you and the IACET site visitor on when they can come in and go over the application with you or anyone else involved. Okay, so the next question, this one comes from John Young. Unfortunately, he just left, but he's asking, is the $3,250 partially refundable if your application is not accepted? Unfortunately, no, it is not. Once you submit that $3,250, or if you're renewing and you submit the $2,500, that is a non-refundable fee. So, unfortunately, we got to keep that for you. Jason Cohen. Thank you for staying on here with me here, Jason. And Melinda, I'll be with you in just 1 minute with your question. Jason's asking for categories 4 through 9 on ANSI. Do we have to submit information on application for each and every CEU program that we have? Good question, Jason. No. In the application, we want to see an example of 1 or 2 of your courses from beginning to end. How it's created, how is it announced to others, what materials you're using, where is it being taught at, who's teaching it, how are you following up, all those fun things. We just want to see an example of like 1 or 2 of your courses in action. If you just deliver just 1 course, then of course you would just need to see that one. But yeah, we don't. If you're offering 5, 10, 20 courses and you want them to be all IACET accredited, we don't need to see all of them. We just need to see an example of just a couple when you submit the application. So that would be a whole lot of work for you to do. We have real big organizations that have many different courses, and we have the real small ones that also offer a couple courses every month. So yeah, we don't need to see that information. It's just when you submit the application, you just need to provide evidence of 1 of your course, or 1 or 2 of your courses in action. So Jason, hopefully that has answered your question there as well. And Melinda's asking, CBTs are covered in addition to instructor-led courses, correct? Actually, Melinda, I'm going to, Melinda, I'm a little bit thrown off by CBTs. I might know it, but I'm just having a brain fart right now. Can you help remind me of those? And unfortunately, I can't open up your phone line. Computer-based training, web-based training. Thank you very much. So computer-based training, web-based training are covered in addition to instructor-led courses, correct? Correct. Yes, we approve organizations that offer all kinds of delivery methods. So in-person instructor-led courses, as you mentioned here, computer-based training, web-based training, online, distance learning, whatever you want to call it. And we have blended, so they do in-person, but they also do online and distance learning as well. And we have I think maybe 1 or 2 that have self-paced study as well. So yeah, we can approve organizations that deliver all kinds of different methods. Thanks a lot. Oh, okay. Oh, my pleasure. Sorry, just reading off the question out loud here. So yeah, of course, again, I want to thank everybody that stayed on the line with me and also had the patience to wait for my phone system here. I did a whole practice about 30 earlier today, and everything seemed perfect. I checked the recording and everything, and then of course my phone system goes dead. So I apologize for that, but thank you for sticking in here with me. Keep an eye out for the follow-up email, which will include this presentation recording as well as the PDF version of the PowerPoint and the survey evaluation link to let us know how the presentation was, any comments that you have, and of course any questions that you weren't able to ask today. So with that, thank you very much, everyone. Have a great day, and please let me know. You can either respond to my follow-up or just contact me at any time here if you have any questions about the application, about the process, or, of course, anything IACET. So with that, thank you very much, and have a great day.